Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the chance to speak on a topic that often goes unnoticed but can deeply impact lives, the subject of narcissistic personality disorder, specifically in women. Now, let me start by saying this: narcissism isn't just about someone being full of themselves. It's far more complex than that. It's a deep-rooted disorder, one that leads individuals to inflate their self-worth, demand constant admiration, and struggle to feel empathy for others. It's a struggle, a battle inside the mind, one that causes pain and leaves emotional scars, not only for the person suffering but for everyone around them. But here's the thing: while we understand narcissism in general, we often overlook how it manifests in women. Society teaches us to view women in certain ways. We expect them to be nurturing, gentle, selfless. But when a woman exhibits traits of narcissism, when she demands attention, when she manipulates, when she seeks to control, she's often misunderstood. Her actions might be labeled as confident or assertive, but these traits often cover the deeper wounds and insecurities beneath the surface. Ladies and gentlemen, narcissistic personality disorder is not something that only affects one gender. But in women, the symptoms can often be cloaked under a veneer of charm, seduction, and charisma. So the question becomes, how do we address it? How do we deal with it? First, let's recognize the impact it has on relationships. Whether it's family, friendships, or romantic partnerships, the effects of NPD are profound. Women with NPD may demand constant validation from others, yet they are incapable of providing the same in return. They use people to fulfill their own needs, leaving others feeling drained, ignored, and unimportant. The emotional toll on those around them can be immense, often leaving people questioning their own worth and self-esteem. But this isn't the end. There's hope. There is a path to healing, but it requires self-awareness, recognizing the disorder for what it is, confronting it, and seeking help. It requires being brave enough to look in the mirror and understand that change doesn't happen overnight. Healing is a long journey, one that demands patience, dedication, and the willingness to grow. We as a society must do better. We need to be aware of the signs of narcissism, not just in women, but in everyone. We must encourage self-reflection, foster empathy, and advocate for those who need help. Let's not turn a blind eye when we see these patterns. Let's support those in need, and let's help them heal, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of all those whose lives they touch. Thank you. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is a complex and multifaceted psychological condition that goes far beyond the common stereotype of being overly self-absorbed or vain. At its core, NPD involves a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a need for constant admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. These traits can manifest in a variety of ways, deeply influencing the way an individual perceives themselves and interacts with those around them. It's important to understand that while some individuals may show narcissistic tendencies from time to time, NPD is a diagnosable disorder that affects how a person functions in daily life, especially in their relationships, work, and social settings. The hallmark of narcissism lies in an inflated sense of self-importance. People with NPD often exaggerate their achievements and talents, expecting others to recognize their superiority without necessarily demonstrating the merit to back it up. This inflated self-image leads them to believe that they are unique or exceptional, and they often expect others to treat them as such. Their grandiosity may not always manifest in over-bragging or boastfulness, but rather in a quiet, persistent sense of entitlement, a belief that they deserve special treatment, admiration, and praise simply because they exist. For someone with NPD, the validation of others is an essential part of their emotional well-being. They require constant attention and admiration to feel good about themselves. Their self-esteem is fragile, and it is largely dependent on external validation rather than internal confidence. If they feel that they are not receiving the attention or recognition they believe they deserve, they may react with intense anger, frustration, or withdrawal. This can lead to a cycle of emotional highs and lows, with periods of extreme self-assurance followed by moments of deep insecurity. A key aspect of NPD is a profound lack of empathy. People with this disorder often have difficulty recognizing or understanding the feelings, needs, and emotions of others. They are unable or unwilling to put themselves in another person's shoes, and are generally uninterested in how their actions or words might affect those around them. This lack of empathy is not necessarily a result of malice, but rather stems from an internal world that revolves entirely around their own needs and desires. For individuals with NPD, relationships are often seen as transactional. They expect others to give without asking for anything in return, and they rarely reciprocate emotional support. The need for constant admiration and validation can drive individuals with NPD to seek out relationships that cater to their ego. This could manifest in romantic relationships, friendships, or even professional environments where the narcissist gravitates toward individuals who will provide them with the praise and attention they crave. However, the relationships that form in this way are rarely healthy or balanced. The narcissist's inability to empathize with others often leaves those in their orbit feeling unimportant, unappreciated, and emotionally drained. Over time, the narcissist's need for validation can lead to a cycle of manipulation, emotional exploitation, and neglect, as they may devalue those who can no longer meet their needs or who challenge their worldview. People with NPD often struggle to maintain long-lasting, fulfilling relationships. The dynamics of these relationships are built on superficial admiration and a lack of genuine emotional connection. As a result, those around the narcissist may feel unheard, unseen, and undervalued. This leads to significant emotional distress, which can affect the well-being of friends, family members, and even coworkers. For a person with NPD, the emotional toll on others may be completely invisible to them, as they are primarily concerned with their own emotional survival. While the external behaviors and interactions of someone with NPD can appear self-centered and even hostile at times, it is important to recognize that these actions are rooted in deep-seated insecurities and emotional pain. At the heart of narcissism lies vulnerability and intense fear of being seen as inadequate or unworthy. Narcissists may build up an inflated sense of self as a defense mechanism to protect themselves from these feelings of insecurity. The grandiose self-image they project is often a fragile mask, hiding deep emotional wounds that they are unwilling or unable to confront. This inner turmoil can make it difficult for individuals with NPD to truly connect with others in meaningful ways, as their primary focus remains on protecting their fragile ego rather than cultivating authentic relationships. Despite the challenges that people with NPD face, it is crucial to understand that the disorder is treatable. However, treatment requires the individual to develop self-awareness, which can be a daunting task for someone who is so deeply invested in maintaining their grandiose self-image. Therapy, particularly forms of psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can help individuals with NPD explore the roots of their behavior, work on developing empathy, and find healthier ways of interacting with the world. With the right support and commitment to change, it is possible for someone with NPD to make meaningful progress toward healthier self-esteem and more fulfilling relationships. But the first step must come from within, a recognition that their way of relating to others is not serving them or those around them. In conclusion, narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder that goes beyond superficial vanity. It is a condition marked by a deep-seated need for validation, a lack of empathy, and a distorted self-image that can affect an individual's ability to form healthy relationships. Recognizing and understanding NPD is the first step toward addressing the disorder, whether in oneself or in others. With patience, self-awareness, and the willingness to change, individuals with NPD can break free from the patterns that hold them back and build more authentic, meaningful connections with the people around them. Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD, presents itself in unique ways depending on the individual, and it's important to acknowledge that gender plays a significant role in how the disorder manifests. While the core characteristics of NPD, grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, remain consistent across genders, the way these traits are expressed can differ based on societal expectations, cultural norms, and the roles typically ascribed to men and women. Gender shapes the way people experience and display their narcissistic tendencies, and in women, these traits may often go unrecognized or be misinterpreted as other characteristics such as confidence, assertiveness, or independence. This creates a challenge in diagnosing and understanding NPD in women, as their behaviors are sometimes normalized or even praised in ways that would not be as readily accepted in men. In many cultures, women are expected to embody traits of warmth, empathy, nurturing, and selflessness. When a woman exhibits the hallmark signs of narcissism, such as demanding excessive attention or displaying a sense of entitlement, these behaviors can be at odds with the stereotypical view of femininity. Rather than seeing such behaviors as problematic, they may be mischaracterized as signs of strength, self-assurance, or simply confidence. This often makes it difficult for people to recognize that these traits are part of a deeper psychological disorder. In many cases, the symptoms of narcissism in women may be framed in a positive light, while the same traits in men might be seen as arrogant or domineering. Women with NPD often display behaviors that are more covert than their male counterparts. Where a man might outwardly flaunt his achievements or demand admiration, a woman with narcissistic traits may present herself in a more subtle, indirect way. She may use charm, manipulation, or seduction to gain the validation and attention she craves, often creating an aura of mystique and allure. This can make it even harder for others to detect the underlying narcissism, because these behaviors are often seen as attractive or charismatic, rather than manipulative or self-centered. In this way, the narcissistic traits of women can sometimes be more difficult to spot, as they are often wrapped in socially acceptable or even desirable behaviors. Another significant difference in how NPD presents in women is how it influences their relationships. While both men and women with NPD may struggle with empathy, women may also experience a stronger desire to form intimate, close-knit relationships where they can dominate and control the emotional dynamic. The need for validation is no less intense, but the way it is sought may involve creating an image of being the ideal partner, friend, or caregiver. This creates a cycle where the narcissistic woman may attract people who are drawn to this image of perfection and idealization. However, once the relationship deepens, the narcissistic traits often become more apparent, leading to emotional exploitation, manipulation, and a lack of reciprocity. The lack of empathy in women with NPD can be particularly damaging in relationships because it manifests not only as an inability to understand or care about the feelings of others as an emotional disconnect. Narcissistic women may take the people around them for granted, expecting others to cater to their needs without offering support in return. This can create a dynamic where those in the narcissist's life feel drained, unimportant, and disconnected, even though they are giving their all to the relationship. In many cases, those closest to the narcissistic woman may feel emotionally manipulated, and the longer the relationship continues, the more difficult it can be to see the behavior for what it is: narcissism, rather than the woman's more surface-level characteristics. In addition to the effects on personal relationships, women with NPD may experience unique challenges in professional settings. Women in particular are often expected to balance professional ambition with compassion and emotional intelligence. When a woman with narcissistic traits enters the workplace, her behavior may not align with the traditional expectation of female empathy. She may seek constant recognition, overstate her accomplishments, or use others to climb the ladder of success, without regard for the well-being of her colleagues. Her lack of empathy and excessive focus on herself may lead to difficulties in team dynamics, where cooperation and mutual respect are key to success. Additionally, her ability to manipulate and charm others could allow her to advance in her career, while her underlying narcissism remains unnoticed or minimized by those who see her as ambitious, driven, or charismatic. There's also a risk that women with NPD may internalize societal pressures, leading to a distorted sense of self-worth that hinges entirely on external validation. This can contribute to a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. Despite outward appearances of confidence or self-assuredness, narcissistic women may become more dependent on the admiration of others to feel validated, and if they perceive themselves as not being sufficiently praised or acknowledged, they may experience anxiety, depression, or anger. This external validation can become a means of survival, reinforcing the need for narcissistic behaviors to feel valued, leading to further emotional instability. One of the most challenging aspects of recognizing NPD in women is that the disorder often goes undeduced for long periods of time, especially in the absence of overtly disruptive behaviors. Because narcissistic traits in women can be subtle and masked by more socially acceptable behaviors, it's easy to misinterpret these signs as ambition or independence. Additionally, the societal expectation that women should be emotionally intelligent and nurturing may lead to further misunderstandings. People around them may dismiss problematic behaviors as something that's merely part of the woman's personality or as a temporary phase, rather than recognizing them as symptoms of a deeper issue. In summary, while the fundamental traits of narcissistic personality disorder remain the same across genders, the way it manifests in women can be distinct. Women with NPD may present their narcissism in more covert, socially acceptable ways, which makes it more challenging to detect and address. Their relationships, whether personal or professional, are often marked by manipulation, emotional exploitation, and an inability to reciprocate empathy. Understanding the gendered nuances of NPD is essential to identifying and treating the disorder effectively, as it allows for a more nuanced approach to diagnosis and support. By acknowledging the unique ways narcissism manifests in women, we can create a more comprehensive understanding of this complex condition and work towards solutions that promote healthier relationships and emotional well-being. The impact of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, on relationships is profound and far-reaching. For individuals with NPD, relationships are often seen not as mutual, reciprocal connections, but as tools for self-validation and sources of admiration. The primary focus for someone with narcissism is often their own needs, desires, and emotions, while the needs and emotions of others take a back seat. This fundamental imbalance can make it incredibly difficult for individuals with NPD to form meaningful and lasting romantic, familial, or professional. The long-term effects on those around them can be emotionally damaging, leaving others feeling unimportant, drained, and emotionally isolated. In romantic relationships, individuals with NPD often approach their partners as extensions of themselves, rather than as independent individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, and needs. They may idealize their partner at first, presenting themselves as the perfect match or soulmate. This initial period can be intoxicating, as the narcissistic partner showers the other with praise, attention, and affection, creating an illusion of a perfect connection. However, this idealization rarely lasts. Over time, the narcissist begins to devalue their partner. Once they feel the person no longer fulfills their emotional needs, or when the partner fails to meet their expectations. In many cases, this devaluation is abrupt and harsh, leaving the partner confused and emotionally hurt. The narcissist's lack of empathy prevents them from fully understanding or caring about the pain they cause. The emotional toll on a partner of someone with NPD is often devastating. Narcissistic individuals may be highly manipulative, using tactics like gaslighting, making the other person doubt their own perceptions or memories to maintain control and avoid accountability for their actions. The narcissist may project blame onto their partner, accusing them of being overly sensitive or irrational when they express their feelings about the unhealthy dynamics in the relationship. The constant shifting of blame and lack of accountability creates an environment of emotional chaos and insecurity for the partner. Over time, the partner may begin to feel like they are walking on eggshells, unsure of what will trigger the narcissist's anger or criticism. The emotional abuse can erode the partner's self-esteem, leaving them feeling worthless and constantly questioning their value. In familial relationships, the effects of NPD are really damaging. A parent with NPD may expect their children to fulfill their emotional needs, viewing them not as individuals, but as extensions of themselves. This dynamic can lead to neglect of the child's own emotional needs, as the narcissistic parent is too preoccupied with seeking validation and admiration. Children may feel caught in a cycle of never being good enough, as the narcissistic parent is rarely satisfied with anything they do. The lack of emotional support or nurturing from a narcissistic parent can leave long-lasting scars, affecting the child's ability to form healthy relationships in adulthood. The child may grow up feeling neglected, emotionally unsupported, or even unloved, and may struggle with self-esteem and trust issues throughout their life. In some cases, a narcissistic parent may also engage in emotional manipulation, using guilt, shame, or threats to maintain control over their children. For example, a narcissistic mother might guilt-trip her child into staying close to her by constantly reminding them of her sacrifices, creating a sense of obligation that overrides the child's need for independence. Such tactics prevent the child from developing a sense of autonomy and self-worth, as their sense of value is continually tied to the narcissistic parent's approval. In extreme cases, the narcissistic parent may even use the child as a pawn in conflicts with the other parent, turning the child into a source of competition or leverage. At work, individuals with NPD often struggle with team dynamics and collaboration. In professional settings, they may use others to advance their own careers, taking credit for accomplishments that are not their own, or manipulating situations to ensure they are the center of attention. A narcissistic employee or leader may demand constant recognition, becoming frustrated when they do not receive the admiration they believe they deserve. This can create a toxic work environment where the narcissist undermines others, creates divisions among coworkers, and fosters an atmosphere of insecurity and fear. Teamwork, which relies on cooperation and mutual respect, becomes nearly impossible when one individual is constantly trying to assert dominance or manipulate others for their own benefit. One of the challenges in dealing with a narcissistic colleague or boss is that their behavior may often be masked by superficial charm or charisma. They may be adept at managing their public image, making them appear confident, competent, and likable to those higher up in the organization. This can lead to a situation where the narcissist is rewarded for their behavior, despite the negative impact they have on those around them. Co-workers may feel belittled, ignored, or taken advantage of, but because the narcissist is skilled at projecting an image of success, their disruptive behavior may go unnoticed or be minimized by management. Over time, this can lead to burnout, resentment, and a lack of motivation among employees as the narcissist drains the energy and morale of the team. The emotional effects of being in a relationship with someone who has NPD can be long-lasting. For those who have experienced emotional manipulation, neglect, or abuse at the hands of a narcissistic partner, parent, or colleague, recovery can be a slow and painful process. Rebuilding self-esteem and trust can take years, and it often requires therapy and support from others who understand the complexity of narcissistic abuse. Individuals who have been affected by NPD may struggle with feelings of guilt, shame, and confusion, unsure of how to move forward or how to break free from the toxic cycle of emotional exploitation. In some cases, individuals may continue to attract narcissistic individuals into their lives, repeating the cycle of emotional damage until they gain the awareness and tools to break free from these patterns. In conclusion, narcissistic personality disorder profoundly impacts relationships, leaving behind a trail of emotional damage for those involved. The narcissist's need for validation, lack of empathy, and manipulation creates a dynamic where others are left feeling unseen, unappreciated, and emotionally drained. Whether in romantic relationships, family dynamics, or professional environments, the effects of NPD can be far-reaching and long-lasting. Recognizing the signs of narcissism and understanding the emotional toll it takes on others is crucial in addressing the disorder and supporting those who are affected. Recovery is possible, but it requires awareness, boundaries, and often professional help to break free from the damaging patterns that NPD creates. The path to healing from narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is not easy, but it is possible with self-awareness, commitment, and the right kind of support. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths about oneself, acknowledging how the disorder has affected relationships, and actively working to develop healthier ways of interacting with the world. For many individuals with NPD, the first and most difficult step is recognizing that their behavior is problematic and that it is causing harm not only to themselves but to those around them. This self-awareness does not come easily, as the disorder is rooted in a fragile sense of self-esteem and a deep fear of vulnerability. It is this fear that often drives the narcissist's grandiose self-image and the need for constant validation, as they are desperately trying to shield themselves from feelings of inadequacy. Without the willingness to face these inner truths, healing becomes almost impossible. The process of healing begins with the recognition that the need for constant admiration and validation is unsustainable and ultimately harmful. Individuals with NPD may find it difficult to accept that their behavior stems from deep-seated insecurity and a fear of being seen as less than or unworthy. The facade of superiority and entitlement is often a defense mechanism to protect the person from these feelings of inadequacy. This recognition can be painful, as it forces the individual to confront the vulnerability they have worked so hard to avoid. However, this first step is crucial, as it lays the foundation for change. It is only when the narcissist begins to acknowledge their fears, insecurities, and emotional wounds that real healing can begin. Once self-awareness is established, the next step is to seek professional help. Therapy is often essential for individuals with NPD to begin to understand the roots of their behavior and learn how to interact with others in a healthier, more empathetic way. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is one of the most effective forms of therapy for narcissism, as it focuses on changing negative thought patterns and behaviors. Through CBT, individuals with NPD can explore the beliefs and thought processes that contribute to their grandiosity and sense of entitlement. They can begin to challenge these distorted beliefs and develop a more realistic, grounded sense of self-worth that does not rely on external validation. Another form of therapy that can be helpful for individuals with NPD is psychodynamic therapy. This type of therapy focuses on understanding the unconscious factors that drive behavior, often rooted in early life experiences. Many individuals with NPD have experienced significant emotional trauma, neglect, or unmet needs during childhood, which may have contributed to the development of the disorder. Through psychodynamic therapy, individuals can explore these early experiences and work through unresolved emotional issues that may be fueling their narcissistic behaviors. Understanding the emotional pain and vulnerabilities that underlie narcissism is a critical step toward healing, as it allows the individual to reframe their sense of self and build healthier emotional responses. In addition to therapy, healing from NPD requires a commitment to change and the willingness to engage in consistent self-reflection. This process can be difficult, as it requires the individual to examine their own behavior in the light of how it affects others. Individuals with NPD often lack empathy and struggle to understand how their actions impact the feelings and needs of those around them. As part of the healing process, it is essential for the individual to develop empathy and work on becoming more attuned to the emotions of others. This requires learning to listen, recognize, and validate the feelings of others, which is often foreign to someone with NPD. Building empathy is a gradual process, but it is an essential component of healing as it fosters healthier relationships and deeper emotional connections. Building healthier relationships is another key aspect of the healing process. Individuals with NPD often struggle with forming authentic, reciprocal relationships, as their need for admiration and control often supersedes their ability to genuinely connect with others. Healing involves learning to relate to others in a way that values mutual respect and emotional intimacy, rather than using relationships for validation or self-serving purposes. This may involve setting healthier boundaries, learning how to give and receive support, and moving away from manipulative or exploitative behaviors. It is also important to recognize that not all relationships will be successful, and it may take time to rebuild trust with those who have been hurt by the narcissist's past actions. Support from family and friends can also play an important role in the healing process. Those who have been affected by a loved one's narcissism may need to learn how to set healthy boundaries and manage their expectations. It is not uncommon for individuals with NPD to have strained relationships with family members or close friends, as their narcissistic behaviors often lead to emotional manipulation, control, and hurt. Family members who are supportive of the healing process can offer a much-needed source of encouragement and understanding, but they must also be prepared to hold the individual accountable for their actions. Healing requires not only the willingness of the person with NPD to change, but also the support of those around them to reinforce healthy patterns of behavior. However, it's important to recognize that the process of healing from NPD is a long and challenging one. It requires ongoing commitment, patience, and self-discipline. There will be setbacks along the way, and the individual with NPD may struggle with old patterns of behavior or face resistance to change. The road to recovery is not linear, and there may be times when progress feels slow or non-existent. But with perseverance and the right support, it is possible to make meaningful changes and build healthier relationships. Healing from NPD requires a willingness to confront the pain that underlies the disorder and to work through the emotional difficulties that have been avoided for so long. It also requires a shift in perspective, moving from a self-centered, defensive worldview to one that embraces empathy, vulnerability, and genuine emotional connection. In conclusion, healing from narcissistic personality disorder is possible, but it requires self-awareness, professional help, and a commitment to long-term change. It is a challenging journey, but it is one that can lead to healthier relationships, deeper emotional connections, and a more authentic sense of self. It involves acknowledging the vulnerabilities and insecurities that underlie narcissism, learning to empathize with others, and building a life that is not dependent on constant validation or admiration. With the right tools, resources, and support, individuals with NPD can take the first steps toward healing, and those who are affected by the disorder can begin to rebuild their lives and relationships.